Hey all, Brian S. Pratt here. Good morning. Going to read chapter 15 of Fires of Prophecy, book 2 of the Morcyth Saga. So, we got Tersa back. Yay, Jerome's got a sister. Next, we're going to go, and then the next day, it's time to get some guards. The pit fighters, Scar and Potbelly, Quinn, Shorty, Stig, Yorn. Let's get some people on here to help defend this caravan, right? And yeah, I really didn't have plans to buy pit fighters on the way down. That didn't occur to me until I was writing chapter 14. Then yeah, boom, pit fighters. They need guards. Hey, that would be cool. And did I have any plans for Scar and Potbelly? No. No, I had no idea what I was going to do with any of them. I didn't plan anything. That they were, as far as I knew, that they were going to be faceless guards, right? But that didn't work out. Scar and Potbelly, they became a favorite of a lot of people, and they even got their own series. If you didn't know, there's one book out in the series, The Improbable Adventures of Scar and Potbelly. Yeah, in it they acquire a treasure map and they go hunt down this treasure. And they have adventures along the way. Anyway, here's chapter 15. They just bought Tersa and they're heading back from the slave markets of Khorasan, and they're heading back to where Delia and the others are with the caravan at the caravansary in Khorasan. Chapter 15. When they left the city and were seen approaching the caravan, Delia and Tanakh left the others and raced toward them. Delia gave Tersa a big hug while Tanakh patted Jerome on the back. Jerome took hold of the tether around his sister's neck and used one of his knives to remove it. The world seemed to stop for a moment as they looked at each other, reunited after so many hardships. Allowing herself to finally express her emotions, Tersa hugged her brother as tears fell. The others removed themselves to the wagons to give them a moment alone. James relayed the events back at the slaver compound. When he got to the part where Jerome fought the Parvati, Jerome and Tersa joined the group. After he finished, Tanakh said, "Wish I could have been there." Delia went to a wagon and brought back a rectangular box and handed it to Tersa. Opening it, she found a beautiful new dress inside. She looked to Delia, almost ready to again break down into tears. "Thank you," she exclaimed as she removed the dress. Smiling, Delia said, "I just thought you would want something nice to wear." Jerome hugged Delia, saying, "I never thought about clothes, thank you." Returning his hug, she patted him on the shoulder as she said, "You're a man, I figured you wouldn't." Tersa turned to her brother. "Are we going home?" "I don't think there is a home to go back to," he said, hating the words even though he knew they were the truth. "But," she said apprehensively, "what are we to do?" "First thing is to get you out of those rags," Delia said as she led her to a wagon where blankets were already set up for privacy while she changed. "What do we do now?" Tanakh asked while Tersa changed. Miko is still heading south," James replied, and then he explained how he figured that out. "I plan to continue south and find him." He looked at everyone before adding, "You needn't feel obligated to accompany me now that your sister is back with you." Jerome gave him a look and said, We're not about ready to turn our backs on you, James." "That's right," Tanakh joined in. "Besides, where would we go?" "Right now, we're together, and being together gives us security," Roland added. "No point everyone going their own way just yet. I figure as long as we act the part of traitors, we will be left alone." Looking around at the group, he said, "We don't exactly look the part of spies or invaders." "True," James said. "I'm not sure how far my quest for him will lead us, though." "It doesn't matter," Jerome replied. "We're standing by you till you get him back." "Thank you," James replied. "I was hoping you would." Just then, Delia returned with a much improved Tersa. She had brushed out her hair and cleaned herself up. The guys caught their breath at the vision of feminine beauty walking toward them. "Tersa," Jerome exclaimed. "I can't believe that's you." "Do I look all right?" she asked. "All right," Tanakh said with a smile. "You're gorgeous." Cassie gave him an annoyed look. "But not as gorgeous as you," he told her, which softened her expression. "Girlfriend, right?" "Thank you," she said, blushing slightly. "But she needs more practical clothes for traveling," Delia said. "This dress will hardly be suitable for the road." "Good idea." James said. In fact, each of us could use a change of clothing. We're not leaving until tomorrow anyway. Then it's settled, Delia announced. Roland, Ezra, and I will go to town to purchase more clothes. Turning to Tersa, she said, it would probably be best for you to stay here. Tersa nodded. I would prefer that. When we return, she said to James, then you and the other guys can go and get some extras for yourselves as well. Maybe we should get equipment for those we will be buying tomorrow, Tanuk asked. Might not be a bad idea, agreed James. Do you know what we're going to need and the sizes? I think so, Jerome said. I know who 3 of them are, so we can get at least those 3 set up and then see about the rest once they're here. We have 6 additional horses. Will they be able to ride? Jerome and Tanuk looked at each other and laughed. What's so funny? I don't think they've ever been on a horse before, Jerome said. Yeah, they're going to be sore, Tanuk exclaimed and then commenced laughing once again. Delia and her group headed out toward town to do their shopping while the rest waited at the wagons. Jerome and Tersa swapped stories of what had happened to them since the last time they were together. When he mentioned James and his ability to do magic, she looked over to him with eyes wide, a little fearful. You've nothing to worry about, her brother assured her. He's nothing like the stories of mages that we grew up on. He's okay. Besides, without him, I wouldn't be here. Seeing James notice her looking at him, she passed him a quick, slightly uncertain smile, then resumed her conversation with her brother. A couple hours later, Delia and her group returned. Trailing along behind were 3 boys, each bearing an armload of packages. Pardon? Think you got enough? Jerome asked, a slight smile on his face. Hope so, she said, oblivious to his sarcasm. Just a few necessities that will be needed. Ezra had a new sling for Archie slung across her chest. His wide, curious eyes peered out from within. Just put them in that wagon, she told the porters. Once they placed them in the desired locations, she gave each 2 coppers, and they returned to the city. Shall we? Jerome asked James. Yeah, let's, he agreed. Jerome, Tanuk, Roland went into town to get the equipment they would need for the new guards, as well as some extra clothes for themselves. They always leave Tanuk back at the wagons, but since Cassie's there, I don't think he minds. I know I wouldn't. Any opportunities for smooching and snuggling, it would be good for me. The first stop was a clothier, where they each purchased a second set of clothes, as well as a set for those being purchased tomorrow. James arranged to have them delivered back to the caravan. Outside the clothiers, Roland asked, Now where to? Need weapons, Jerome said. If they are going to be guards, they won't do much good without them. True, agreed James. Asking a passerby, Roland learned of a blacksmith across town that usually had weapons for sale. They proceeded there to see what he had available. On the way, they saw a group of 5 bodies coming down the street toward them. Their distinctive tattoos gave them a menacing appearance. Unsure as to how they were likely to react over the outcome of the fight at the auction, James led the others down a side alley. Hiding in the shadows against one of the walls, they waited until the group passed by the mouth of the alley. Jerome returned to the end and peered around the corner to see if they were gone. When he saw the bodies that continued on their way, he gave the others an all-clear signal, and they returned to the street. That was close, Roland said. Don't know if we could have fought off that many, James said, not and avoid unwanted attention. Keeping a lookout for more roving bands of Parvadis, they continued toward the blacksmith. Having to ask for directions twice more, they arrived outside an open courtyard where metal being hammered rang from within a building off to the side. Entering the courtyard, they saw where the side of the building opened up, and in the shade given by an overhang, a burly man busily hammered a piece of metal upon an anvil. To James's relief, the man appeared to have originated from the north. At their approach, he put the hot metal into a bucket of water. A steaming hiss and a cloud of steam appeared when the hot metal hit the water. He held it within the water but a moment before removing it. After a quick inspection, he placed the piece of metal upon a nearby table and turned to greet them. Good day to you. Good day to you as well, replied James. We were told that you may have weapons for sale. That I do, the blacksmith replied. If you'll follow me, I'll show you what I have. Thank you. Following the blacksmith, they entered the building through a side door where they found many racks holding various types of weapons. There were swords, knives, maces, and several other styles that James had never seen before. All looked very deadly. "What are you interested in?" he asked. James turned to Jerome and looked at him questioningly. "Yorn uses a long sword and shield. Scar likes two swords, and Potbelly uses a short sword and knife," Tanakh added. "Oh, I guess Tanakh did come with him." That's funny. I better add that, right? Yeah. Let's see here. No, I did. Jerome, Tanakh, and Roland went into town to get the equipment. Okay. Yeah, so I got Jerome, Tanakh, and Roland went into town. So, I don't know what I was thinking. So Tanakh went into town, but I didn't say James did, right? So, went into town with James. Okay, there we go. Jerome, Tanakh, and Roland went into town with James to get the equipment. All right, for 4 guys. It's funny, you can read stuff and your mind just fills in the blanks. And like I read that Tanakh wasn't coming with us and James was. Isn't that weird? I think I edit too much. I need an editor. I just give it to them and they can just fix it, right? If you gentlemen, let's see. Oh, Scar likes 2 swords and Potbelly uses a short sword and knife. Interesting thing with that. I've already gone through this once recently. Well, I think when I was doing The Unsuspecting Mage, when I was doing Shepherd's Quest, I was going through this as well. And when I was doing Shepherd's Quest for YouTube, that is. And when I came to this part, I originally had Scar with knife and sword and Potbelly as 2 swords. No one ever called me on that. So that was interesting. Yeah, but Scar, well, at least in the Trial of the Dark Mage, Scar always had 2 swords, and Potbelly had the sword and knife. Oh, another interesting thing. Scar and Potbelly, like I said, has their own series, The Improbable Adventures of Scar and Potbelly. I'm currently about halfway through writing how they met. Boys, how Scar became Scar and Potbelly became Scar and Potbelly, and how they got into the pits. That's what that book's about. And yeah, it's one of the fantastic adventures too. And Potbelly, well, Potbelly's not fat. You think Potbelly, you think big beer belly, but he's not. He's lean and tough and like any other pit fighter. Fat guys don't do well in the pits. But why is it called Potbelly? I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. Scar, well, Scar is just a cool name to have. But how did he get that name, right? Because he wasn't called. Actually, okay. In the book, it starts out. It starts out following this kid called Thurlius Brown the Third, but everyone around him calls him Thurlius Brownbottom, and he's pretty much picked on. That's Scar. So Scar's real name is Thurlius Brown. It's a cool name, right? Haven't quite figured out what Potbelly's name is yet. I haven't. Well, no, I think I'm about 1/3 through the book. And I haven't got the Potbelly yet. It's just following Scar right now. And Scar's about ready to get into trouble, which will throw him in with Potbelly. And then they'll just kind of not necessarily be friends at first, but yeah. I don't want to give too much away. They inspected. If you gentlemen like, feel free to look. I have it. Feel free to look around. Oh, ED off. Feel free to look around and examine the weapons, the blacksmith suggested. Thank you, we will, replied James. They inspected the various weapons while the blacksmith looked on. James was totally at a loss as far as telling if a weapon was good or bad. He stood back and let Jerome and Tanakh decide. After inspecting all the swords and knives, feeling for balance and sharpness, they settled on the ones that were the best for the lot. Unfortunately, the blacksmith didn't have any shields. They would have to find an armorer for that. James let Jerome do the haggling and then handed over the coins. When James asked if they could be delivered to the caravan, the blacksmith said, "My apprentice is currently out for his midday meal, but when he returns, I can have him deliver them first thing." "Thank you," James said. "We would appreciate that." Leaving the blacksmith's shop, they went in search of an armor for a shield for Yorn. They found a shop boasting a sign bearing a shield not very far from the blacksmith. Inside were numerous shields available in varying sizes, thickness, and strength. Jorn found one that he said looked similar to the one Yorn had used back in the pits. Handing over the coins, James realized that they had all but exhausted the money that he bought. They took the shield with them, since it would be no burden to carry back. I never thought about getting the pit fighters armor, at least leather armor, right? So I guess they'll be just fighting with shirts and trousers. After leaving the armor shop, they headed back to the caravan. On the way, they again ran across the group of Parvadis. Only this time, the Parvadis saw them first and altered course to intercept. Seeing them approach, James feared the worst and readied one of his slugs. The Parvadis came close before stopping. The leader of the group took an additional step forward and spoke. Roland replied, and then the Parvadis said something else. Turning to the others, Roland said, "He is asking if you were the man who..." Turning to not the others, but Jiron, Roland said, "He is asking if you were the one who fought the blood duel earlier in the slaver compound." Looking worried, he asked, "What should I tell him?" "Tell him the truth," Jiron replied, and turned his gaze upon the leader. Turning back to the Parvati, Roland told him that Jiron was in fact the one pointing him out. The leader turned to Jiron and reached into his tunic, bringing out a necklace with 3 spherical stones. He said something to Roland as he handed it to Jiron. Taking the necklace, Jiron looked questioningly to Roland. "He said that to defeat a Parvati in a blood duel is an amazing thing," he explained. He also said that it showed great skill and that this necklace would show any Parvati that you are to be treated with respect. It kind of made you one of them. It kind of makes you one of them. Makes you one of them. Jiron gave the Parvati a slight bow and said, "Tell him I am greatly honored to be accounted as one of the Parvatis." Roland translated for the Parvati, who broke into a smile and spoke one last time. Then he turned and he and the group walked away. "What did he say?" James asked. "He said, 'May your knives drink deeply.'" Jerome placed the necklace around his neck as he watched the departing Parvadis. "Thought we were in trouble there for a moment," admitted James. "So did I," added Roland. "Let's return to the caravan," Jerome said as he began walking. It didn't take them long to find their way back, and they were surprised to discover that the packages containing their clothes had already been delivered. "If we keep buying stuff," James observed when he saw the water wagon was beginning to fill with their things, "we will need to get another wagon just for belongings." "Probably," Delia agreed. Shortly after the sun crested the horizon the following morning, James, Jerome, and Roland were again headed back into town for the auction. Before leaving, James filled his money pouch once more from the chest and realized that they had spent almost all of it. He mentioned the fact that they're running out of money to Delia as he said, "I'll see what I can do." "All right," James said. As they left, Delia hollered out, "Don't get into any fights this time." When they arrived at the Slayer's compound, people recognized Jerome from the day before. Many came up and congratulated him on his victory over the Parvati. Due to his notoriety, they were allowed to proceed to the front of the crowd for the auction. After a wait of about 15 minutes or so, the slavers came onto the platform, and shortly afterwards, the first line of slaves were brought out. These were men this time, and they looked as if all came from the fall of the City of Light. Their ages ranged anywhere from 15 to 50. Some looked to have had an exceptionally hard time, and the number of bruises covering their bodies was any indication. "Recognize any?" James asked. "A couple," Jerome replied, though none were interested in. The auctioneer began, and they quickly went from one to the next until the entire line had been sold. "They're going for a lot less than the girls had," Roland told them. "Wouldn't be surprised," James commented. When they brought the next batch out, Jerome said to Roland, I see Yorn. He's the third in line. Roland nodded and waited until the first two had been sold, and then joined in the bidding. Whether it was because he was with Jerome or because no one wanted him, the auction lasted only a few rounds. Having outbid everyone else, Roland moved forward and handed over the coins. Leading Yorn by his tether, Roland brought him to the group. Upon seeing Jerome, he smiled briefly before resuming the stoic look of a slave. Jerome gave him a nod and then turned his attention back to the auction. The rest of the line were auctioned off quickly, and then another batch of slaves were brought in. There are Scar and Potbelly. Now, I'm gonna make that singular. I mean, technically it's not because Scar and Potbelly is two, but it just feels right. There's Scar and Potbelly. You told her because they're like a couple, right? Which ones? Scar's the first in line and Potbelly is the fifth. He pointed them out, then turned to Yorn. Did you tell him about me? He shook his head, and then whispered back. You asked me not to, but they saw you fighting here yesterday. When they mentioned it to me, I let them in on it. Jerome nodded as he turned back to the auction. When Roland went up to get him, Scar gave him a look that said he was dead and got a lash across his shoulders for it. When Roland led him to the group, he grinned when he saw Jerome and Yorn, then remembered himself and again donned the look of a dejected slave. They waited for Potbelly's turn, and in just a few moments, he stood amongst them. When the next line was brought, James heard Jerome gasp, "What? See that little guy there?" He said, second in line. "Yeah. He's another of the knife fighters. Not as good as Tanaka and me, but good," he explained. "He used to show me how we could hit an apple thrown in the air with his throwing knives. Of course, he was never allowed to use them in the pits." Turning to Roland, he said, "We want him and number 5. Roland nodded and bid for them when their turn came. Number 5's name is Stig. He's good with Mason's shield. You know, I made up Stig, and I thought that I was really clever at making up that name, but come to find out, it's an actual name. I mean, I think it's Norwegian, some place up there in that area. Yeah, cool name. I like that name." Soon, the knifer and Stig stood with the others. Jerome had to silence them on more than one occasion when they began to talk amongst themselves. The next line didn't contain anyone that they were interested in, although Jerome got a satisfied look on his face when they were brought out. James noticed his expression and asked him about it. "The third guy in line," he said, pointing him out. "He once tried to accost Tersa and had to spend 2 weeks recovering when I was through with him. Glad he's up there. He got bought by a farmer whom they heard needed help on his farm." "Back-breaking labor," Jerome said. "Good." He watched with great satisfaction as the man was taken by the farmer and led out of the compound. The next line finally yielded the last man they were there for, a young man of average build who Jerome said was very deadly with the quarterstaff. Once he was bought, they led their newly acquired slaves out of the courtyard and back to the cavern. After they arrived at the caravan, Jerome removed their tethers and said, "You guys are expensive." They all laughed. "Thanks, man," Yorn said to Jerome. "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank James. He's the one footing the bill." They expressed their gratitude. Yeah, I gotta say gratitude. Can't keep saying great thanks, right? They handed out the clothes that they bought for the ones they knew about, and they quickly removed their slave clothes and donned the others. While they changed, Jerome explained what was going on and that they planned to search for James's friend Miko, how they were going to act as a caravan, and that they would be playing the part of guards. "You know," Scar said after he heard about Miko, "an official came through and took a whole bunch of them in the morning after the escape attempt." "Yeah," said the little guy, whose name, accurately enough, was Shorty. "The slaver in charge seemed really unhappy about him coming and taking them all away." "It seemed like he had no choice in the matter," added Potbelly. "Your friend is most likely in that group." "Think we could find out where they are heading?" James asked. "I do know they are headed south." "Maybe," Jerome said. "We still need some weapons too," Shorty piped up. "We got enough left for that?" Jerome asked. "Might have," James replied. "Let's go back in and get the rest of it then," he said. "May as well," James replied as he grabbed Roland and with Jira headed back into town. The newly acquired guards were more than happy to stay behind and catch up on what was going on with Tanaka and the others. The first stop was to the clothier to pick up James's belt for his iron slugs. He managed to have the belt ready and James tried it on, a perfect fit. Taking a slug out of a pocket, he tried sliding it in. It was a firm fit and unlikely to fall out on its own. Using his finger, he pressed against the slug through the slit in the side of the pouch, and it slid out with little difficulty. Perfect, he told the man as he handed over the remaining 3 silvers. I'm glad, the clothier said as he took the coins. I've never seen anything like that before. Call me where I come from, he said, thinking of gun belts. Thank you. You're very welcome, the clothier said. Do come again. After leaving the clothier shop, they completed the rest of the shopping quickly, this time carrying their belongings with them since there wasn't quite as much as before. When they returned to the caravan and distributed clothes and weapons, Georgie was absolutely ecstatic about the set of throwing knives they had bought. Taking one out, he threw it at a nearby tree where it struck point first and embedded itself 3 inches. He ran over and removed it, replacing it back in the belt with the others. James took in the newly dressed men and was satisfied that they should now be less likely to stand out, as well as be better protected. James, Dilly said to him as she approached. Yes? He asked. Do you think it would be possible to find out where your friend Miko is heading? She asked. Why? There are 2 main roads to the south, and if I knew which one we'd be taking, I may be able to arrange for cargo to help replenish our depleted supply of coins. Maybe, he said, as he got up to retrieve the mirror from his shaving kit. Settling on the ground with the mirror cupped within his hands, he concentrated on Miko. Dita sat next to him and watched as Miko appeared, still riding in the wagon. Can you expand the image? Try to see more of the surrounding area, she asked. One of the roads follows the river, and that flows from the lake. Nodding, he concentrated, and they watched as the view expanded, and sure enough, the road followed the river. Does that help? Yes, it does, she said. Getting up, she signaled Roland and Tanakh, and they followed her as she headed back to town. I guess Roland and Tanakh are her trader buddies. Tanakh for defense and Roland for translation. Yeah. She has found her calling, hasn't she? Getting up, he relaxed the rest of the afternoon, watching as the men became acquainted with their new weapons, sparring with one another. James was amazed at the speed and accuracy with which they wielded their weapons. Also surprising was that no one received a cut or nick by a blade during it all. The lad with the quarterstaff, who worked primarily by himself, whirling and twirling the staff until it whined. He saw James watching him and gave him a nod, smiling before resuming his practice. Several hours later, when the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Dilly returned. Tanakh carried a large sack of food. I thought everyone could use one last good meal before we set out tomorrow, she explained. Good idea. I did manage to acquire a couple consignments, nothing major. They are to be delivered at a few towns along the road, she explained. They will bring them out to us in a little while. When the smell of the roasted meat contained within the sack reached the guys practicing, all thoughts of practice halted as they hurried over. Ravenous for some real food after so long on slave rations, they pretty much consumed it all, but not before everyone else was able to get some for themselves. Over the next hour, 3 different wagons came and delivered the goods for transport, transferring them to Delia's wagons. Delia came to James and sat down. I neglected to mention to you that the road your friend is traveling on leads to the capital of the empire. Oh? Doesn't that make you nervous? A little, she admitted, but there isn't much I can do about it, is there? No, I suppose not, she replied. When they settled down for the night, there was one thing that James realized that he forgot to get for the new arrivals: bedrolls. But they didn't seem to mind. Sleeping free is good no matter the circumstances. And that is 15. So that is their adventures in Khorasan. They got their guards. They got Tersa. Have a good idea in the direction Michael's heading. They're going to set out for him in the morning. Delia, being the master trader, is funding their entire operation. And they got guards. You know, some of the most deadliest guards anywhere. So chapter 16 tomorrow. Today's Monday. Heading to Paris today. Paris, Texas, that is. For those who don't know, Paris, France, of course, has the Eiffel Tower. Paris, Texas has a miniature Eiffel Tower. And I have actually not seen it yet. It's not anywhere near where I go there. I may just go to either the movies. No, we don't go to the movies there. No, we go to if we go to a town, we go to Sherman, Texas for movies. We go there for Walmart and Chinese buffet, and once in a while Panda Express. Other than that, oh, my son goes there for Papa Murphy's. He loves Papa Murphy's. I do too. It's really good. Take and bake, great. Garlic chicken, the gourmet garlic chicken pizza. Gourmet chicken garlic, what do they call it? Best pizza out there. So chapter 16, thank you all for hanging with me. And I'll see you tomorrow.